hours to go for the first phase of elections for the Gujarat Assembly. The biggest question is how close is this fight? While predicting the outcome of any election is a foolhardy attempt, some indications have emerged in the form of at least 5 pre-election surveys done by various agencies. The broad direction these polls point to is a comfortable majority for the BJP, but with perhaps a slight dip from the 115 seats they currently hold in the 182-member assembly. This would also be a far cry from the 150 seats the BJP aims to get in this election. So is this going to turn into a close enough fight, or will the BJP push through, though with fewer seats? To speak on this, I'm joined this evening by Yashwant Deshmukh of C Voter and political analyst R Jagannathan, who joins in on the conversation. Welcome to both of you. Yashwant, I'll begin with you because C Voter has put its figures out as well, and you're giving the BJP 109 seats with the Congress at 73. Would you call this a really close fight at this point?
Well, on the state, when you look at the vote share at the state level, it looks like a close fight. But the fact remains that the 4 different regions of Gujarat are in fact voting on 4 different scales, and there are quite a substantial variation as far as the voting intentions is concerned in Gujarat. So, for example, even in 2012, 5 years back, actually Congress had an upper hand in North Gujarat, and they won the majority of the votes and majority of the seats. That lead has gone up for the Congress. So Congress is getting more of the Patidar votes and likely to get the North Gujarat one-sided, one-way traffic. And the big change is happening in South Gujarat, where again the BJP vote share is going down and the Congress vote share is going up. And Congress is likely to end up winning a lot many seats than it had won last 5 years back. But let me remind all the viewers that there are only about 30-odd seats in these 2 regions, which makes it totally about roughly about 60+ seats. What is happening is that in Gujarat, rest of the 2 regions, that is Saurashtra and in the central Gujarat, they are 60+ seats each, almost about 60 seats each. So in Saurashtra, for example, which is going absolutely the other way around as far as the Congress-BJP equation is concerned. Saurashtra was the region where actually 5 years back, Keshubai Patel's party was contesting big time. They polled almost about 10% of the votes in this particular region, which resulted in big number of loss of seats for BJP, courtesy the split of the votes. But what is happening in Saurashtra is that the split of the Leva Patels, which were the Patel caste supporting Keshubai Patel and going in favor of Keshubai Patel last time, they are going back to the BJP lock, stock and barrel after Keshubai Patel party getting merged into the BJP. So in Saurashtra, actually the lead of the BJP is getting even further. So it is very much likely that whatever the loss that BJP is incurring in South Gujarat and in North Gujarat, it is more or less getting subsidized by their gain in Saurashtra region or the Congress loss in Saurashtra region. So now, when this is all even, then the final battle remains in the region called Central Gujarat, which is also known as the epicenter of the 2002 riots region as we know it. Central Gujarat is the key area where the contest is going to be. It looks like it is very a close contest right now in Central Gujarat, but that again, Central Gujarat is split into 2 different ways. One is the urban area, urban concentration, and one in the rural area. Congress is having an upper hand in the rural areas, and BJP is having an upper hand in urban areas. And let me remind the viewers that it is the number of the seats. Gujarat is the most urbanized state one of the most urbanized states in India, and number of the urban constituencies in Gujarat is much more than the rural constituencies. So,
sure.
Keeping that in mind, it will be the Central Gujarat region which would decide the fate. If BJP maintains the stronghold in the urban areas of Central Gujarat, it will stay through. If it doesn't, then the contest might become keener.
Of course, Yashwant, you are a pollster, and that's why you look at all of this data in so much detail and, of course, have the confidence to predict what the outcome could be. But for the rest of us, I think, Mr. Jagannathan, one key question would be that how the whole narrative seems to have changed over the last few months. I would say even 6 months ago, few would have predicted such a close fight. Like even what Yashwant is currently describing, where the Congress would look like it even has a fighting chance.
Absolutely. I think this time the Congress has managed its narrative pretty well. They steered clear of all the 2002 references. They, in fact, kept an arm's length from most of the minorities. And Rahul Gandhi has been hopping from temple to temple to say that he is not an anti-Hindu. In fact, he's a Shiv Bhakt and he's a, sacred thread-wearing Brahmin. That's the kind of stuff that he's been doing, which is a bit unusual. I don't think he needed to do that much, but the fact is the Congress is now focusing on the pain points in the economic side, which is GST, demonetization, rural distress. So I think the narrative they have kept on the economics, which is why the BJP has been on the back foot. It is only towards the last few days that they started doing things like, the Kapil Sibal statement on the Sunni Waqf vote and delaying their hearings, and then you have Mani Shankar Iyer talking some nonsense about niche Rajniti and all that stuff. So I think the issue is a little changed now, but I think the big picture is something like this. I think it is a tough fight for the BJP for this time because they have 22 years of anti-incumbency to live against. Other thing which is consistent across all polls, even though many polls give the BJP a higher number of seats, one thing that is consistent in all polls is between, say, August and the last poll in the end of November.
Okay, I'm losing your voice there.
Trend
Jaggi.
tends to go a little further than where the... Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, to complete that point.
Yeah. I think whenever the trend is going in one direction, it tends to go a little further on election day. So, the CSDS poll put the vote shares of both parties at 43%. Others, of course, have put a gap of 4 to 5%. But the trajectory of the margin is going down consistently in all the polls. So we do not, which is why it's difficult to say now that the BJP is home and dry. They may just scrape through, and maybe these last 2-3 days where all these niche Rajniti and all these things have come might just help the BJP scrape through. But it's on a tough wicket. I think this time, if they pull it off, it'll be quite a miracle.
Yeah, and it would be perhaps with some thanks given to Congress leaders and veterans like Kapil Sibal and Mani Shankar Iyer, if those are issues in the Gujarat election. And that's the other question, Yashwant, really. That what are the issues? Because in this election, we've seen both sides talk about a number of things. And I'm going to focus on issues that the BJP and specifically Prime Minister Modi have raised in his rallies. He's talked about Rahul Gandhi becoming the president without a real election of his own party and calling it Aurangzeb Raj. Now he's talked about, niche Rajniti based on what Mani Shankar Iyer said. Are all of these issues that the voters care about? What have you found in your surveys as, you have spoken to, or your organization has spoken to a broad spectrum of voters? What are their issues?
But the issues are always have been the anti-incumbency at the micro level. That is the non-performance of the sitting MLAs. That has been always an issue. BJP has been pulling out this issue for the last 22 years by just switching off the candidates, changing the candidates big time and fighting the anti-incumbency by clipping off the tickets of the non-performing MLAs. But they had a big asset of Prime Minister Modi, who was the Chief Minister till that point of time, to carry on the message home and dry. Right now, the issue is that while Mr. Modi is the Prime Minister and he is very much going for the question of Gujarat Asmita, he is not there personally in the front as the Chief Ministerial candidate. But at the same time, it remains to be seen that the one thing we must, I totally agree with, Mr. Jagannath that, in the trend line, the gap is closing down in all the polls. But keeping in mind one more important thing in the data point, that all the data collection, all the surveys were completed when the Congress campaign was at the peak and Mr. Modi had not yet even started his campaign. So, in other words, whatever the trend and indicators that we are watching in the data lines are also reflecting the worst for the BJP, that now that the worst for the BJP is over and the Prime Minister has started his campaign, I believe that a lot of critical damage control that can be done would be through the campaign of the Prime Minister alone. We know that Gujarat has had no other issue, barring Mr. Modi, per se, since 2002. So keeping in mind, and this is very critical factor to consider, that all the polls, all the survey numbers that you are watching are till the date when the Congress campaign had peaked and till the date when Mr. Prime Minister had not even started the campaign in Gujarat. So a lot would change. We all agree on that eventually it will bottle down to what kind of campaign Mr. Modi does and what kind of response does he get. Whether or not he is able to carry Gujarat BJP on his shoulders once again, that remains to be seen. But yes, we have to give due credit that whatsoever BJP has been winning in the last 3 years across India has been solely on the campaign of Mr. Modi. So if Mr. Modi can have an effective campaign across India, it is unlikely that his campaign will not have any impact in his home state. And there is no data to capture right now because his campaign started really late into the schedule.
Mr. Jagannathan, one factor that Yashwant has talked about is Prime Minister Modi coming in and really more aggressively pushing in his campaign. That will definitely make a difference. The other factors also that the Congress managing to stitch up those alliances, getting Hardik on board, sorting out, seat sharing with Jignesh. Alpesh Thakur was of course on board earlier. Do these three young Turks, so to speak, hold any great role, or is it just a bit of hype in your view?
No, I think they will certainly move the needle towards the Congress to some extent. But as always is the case, whenever you bring in a caste angle into the polling, when one caste moves in one direction, the castes that are antagonistic or see themselves at a loss when this caste moves ahead tends to swing in the other direction. So overall, there may be a marginal positive move towards the Congress because you've got Alpesh Thakur, Jignesh Mewani and Hardik Patel moving in the direction of the Congress. But the other Patels, some Patidars and others might be moving in the other direction, thinking that they might lose out in this if one section starts moving in a different direction politically. That has always been the case in India in almost every state. So I don't think it will be any different in Gujarat. But yes, there will be a 2 to 3% swing because of these young leaders. And unfortunately, the young leaders have positioned themselves in a very narrow way. If they had merely positioned themselves as youth leaders and cut across caste appeal, then they would have posed a bigger challenge. But what has happened is they have reduced themselves to small caste leaders, which means that their impact will be a little limited. So I don't think that thing. It is mostly, I think the Congress has got its narrative right. It has got some wider alliances going, and it has got its narrative right. That is the most important thing, that they have tried to avoid references to 2002, which tend to immediately polarize the voters, because in Gujarat there is not much difference between the average Congress voter and the BJP voter. Both of them have had a slight anti-minority bias in undercurrent of it. So that, I think the Congress is playing to that cards. Keeping that in mind. To ask
you one last question, Mr. Jagannathan, if the Congress does find some success in their Gujarat campaign, and we'll of course know that on the 18th of this month, do you think that this will become a template for them, that stay away from the minorities, no longer speak about minority rights, and that perhaps will see us through?
No, I think Gujarat is probably a little more unique in that sense than elsewhere. But I think, yes, I think if the Anthony report that came after 2014 very clearly said that the Congress is seen as too pro-minority and possibly anti-Hindu, and that needs to be toned down. So my guess is they will do some course correction there and not talk too much on the minority side, so that they have to win back the core Hindu vote if they have to make a bid for power in 2019. So I think that course correction is being made. But the point is, if the Congress plays soft Hindutva, they are ultimately playing into the BJP's hands. Because if you want to, why vote for the B team when you can vote for the A team in Hindutva? So I think it's just a short-term tactic. It might just work here and there. But as a long-term tactic, it's a self-defeating thing for the Congress because its positioning goes for a toss.
Okay. Thank you so much, R Jagannathan and Yashwant Deshmukh, for speaking with us. 5 polls out. We've shown you most of them. Poll of polls show the BJP with a lead in a majority, but short of perhaps what they expected and they got last time. Is it going to be that close of a fight? Well, of course, we'll have to see on the 18th.